An elderly man sitting quietly in the park stops a robbery and proves he still has sharp observational skills. Before we begin, share in the comments which city you are watching this video from today. The town of Bozeman, Montana, was a place that seemed to have stepped out of a postcard, its tranquility seeping into one's soul. Surrounded by snow-capped peaks, this small town offered a modest life in the lap of nature. In the main square, there was a small cafe where people who knew each other exchanged greetings, a nostalgic bookstore, and a few shops with windows adorned with seasonal flowers. But the true heart of the town was Willow Park, located right in the center. With its vast lawns, shaded trees, and the echoing sounds of birds in the morning, it was the town's breathing space. In the summer, children ran around, dogs played freely, the elderly sat in the shade, and young people lingered on the benches. And in the southeast corner of the park, there was a gray-haired man who sat there every day at the same time. Hank Larson had been sitting on that bench for years, observing his surroundings in the same quiet manner. He wore a faded jacket and a worn hat. Some people thought he was homeless, but he wasn't. He had an old house with paid rent and a regular pension. The townspeople called him Uncle Hank. He would greet people and smile, but rarely engaged in conversation. Children would sometimes come over, stay for a few minutes, then get bored and leave. Young people didn't take him seriously. "Uncle Hank has gone into a trance again," they would laugh and tease him. Adults ignored him, treating his presence as ordinary as the park's iron benches or old trees. But the park keeper, Clara, was different from the others. Clara was a middle-aged woman with attentive eyes. While doing the morning maintenance of the park, she always observed Hank. His upright posture despite his age, his gaze over the surroundings, and the rhythm of his coffee drinking had caught her attention. There was no tremor in his hands. In his eyes, there was not the usual fatigue of an old man, but a sharp alertness. Additionally, even though he always wore the same jacket, the bulge in the left pocket remained constant. Clara had wondered if it was a notebook or a book, but one day, when the jacket button opened, she caught a glimpse of a metallic shine. Strange, she thought to herself. But then she forgot about it. Until that day. July 2025 was unusually hot. The people of Bozeman were enjoying the weekend in the park. The park was lively with picnic blankets spread out on the grass, children licking ice cream, and couples chatting on the benches. Hank arrived as usual around 3 in the afternoon. With a thermos cup in his hand, he sat down on his bench with heavy steps. His eyes began to scan the surroundings as usual. He seemed to be doing nothing, but he noticed everything. And that day, an unusual movement at the other end of the park caught his attention. 2 young men were walking around nervously. Then they suddenly approached a woman. One grabbed the bag on her shoulder, while the other checked the surroundings. The woman screamed, but everyone was either too far away or frozen with fear. Time seemed to slow down in that moment. Hank suddenly stood up. Despite his age, he sprang up from the bench with a swift movement, quickened his pace, and blocked the young men's path. "Let go of her," he said. His voice was so firm and clear that the young men stopped in surprise. Hank's eyes looked at them with a seriousness that came from years of experience. At that moment, the children realized that he was not an old man, but a man who had once given orders. Both of them backed away. Hank took the woman's bag and handed it to her. Applause rose from the crowd, then another, then the whole park. People stood up, but Hank did not respond to the applause. He simply bowed his head and quietly walked back to his bench. He sat down, took a sip from his cup, and fixed his gaze on his surroundings once more. At that moment, the same question echoed in everyone's mind: how had this old man managed to do such a thing? The next day, whispers began to circulate in the park. People were talking about who the old man who had saved the bag was and where he had come from. Some said, he must have been a cop. Others speculated, maybe he has a military background. But one person didn't just wonder who this silent hero really was, she decided to find out: Park Ranger Clara. Clara was in her late 20s, observant and attentive. She had seen Hank sitting on the same bench for years. Like others, she had assumed he was just an elderly park regular. But after yesterday's incident, her opinion had changed. His intervention with the young thieves couldn't have been a coincidence. His speed, posture, determination. Those reflexes couldn't belong to an ordinary person. That morning, Clara arrived a little early. Hank was already there, sitting on the same bench, sipping the coffee he had brought in a thermos. Clara approached him hesitantly. "Mr. Hank," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "What you did yesterday was truly impressive. But there's something else I'm curious about. How did you do it?" Hank didn't answer at first. He took another sip of his coffee. Then he rolled up his sleeve. On the inside of his left arm was a faded tattoo, a binocular symbol, with wings beside it, and underneath, in faded but legible letters, the words, "5th Sniper." Clara's eyes widened. This tattoo was the kind that anyone interested in military history would recognize. "5th Sniper," Clara whispered. "Isn't that one of the special units from Vietnam?" Hank nodded. "It was just a unit," he said. "But some things go beyond the unit." That evening, as soon as she got home, Clara turned on her computer. She searched for 5th Sniper Vietnam 1968. First, a few documentaries and articles came up. Then she found a military archive site. A partially censored document uploaded to the site caught her attention. The title read, "Lang Son Operation, June 12, 1968. According to the text, a sniper who had infiltrated behind enemy lines had prevented 10 American soldiers from being ambushed that day, halting the attack with a single bullet. Thanks to that shot, the complete destruction of a village had been averted. The sniper's name was kept secret. But among the notes under the operation's title was the phrase, "The sniper is recognized by his tattoo of a binocular symbol on his arm." Clara jumped to her feet. Hank's tattoo came to mind. This couldn't be a coincidence. The next morning, Clara arrived at the park even earlier. Hank was there again. The same bench, the same coffee, the same observant gaze. Clara was more determined this time. Her heart was racing, but she couldn't bear not knowing the truth. She approached him. "Sir," she said slowly. "That tattoo. Were you in Vietnam?" Hank turned his head and looked at her. His eyes were steady, deep, and weary. He slowly put down his coffee. There was a long silence. Then, in a voice as light as the wind but clear, he spoke. "Some people want to forget. But some things cannot be forgotten." Clara took a deep breath. "Were you, the sniper? The one who saved that village?" she asked. Hank didn't answer. He lowered his eyes, bowed his head slightly, and returned to his coffee. At that moment, the park's silence changed. The birds were still chirping, the trees were the same. But something was different. As if that green bench had now become a memory. Hank's presence was not just an old man sitting in the park, but the silent echo of an era. From that moment on, Clara knew she could never again refer to him simply as Old Uncle Hank. Clara continued to observe Hank throughout the week. Every morning, he sat on the same bench in the park, drank his coffee, and watched his surroundings carefully. But this was not just a casual glance. Clara noticed, Hank's gaze seemed to make precise calculations. It was as if he was analyzing the direction of the wind, the pace of people walking, even the angle of birds' flight. This wasn't the peaceful morning ritual of a retiree, it was the silent patrol of a trained eye. Curiosity growing, Clara approached Marcus, the park attendant. "What do you know about Uncle Hank?" she asked. Marcus paused for a moment, then shrugged. "He's been here for 30 years. He's a quiet man. He comes every morning, sits on the same bench. But sometimes, he looks at you in a way that makes everyone around him fade into the background, leaving only one target." Clara told him about Hank's tattoo and the robbery a few days earlier. Marcus's eyes widened. That tattoo, was it a telescope and wings? Fifth sniper. Are you sure? Clara nodded. Marcus continued in a whisper, you know, once I saw him shoot a bird, while it was flying. He didn't even pick up a rifle. He pointed with the tip of his cane, and the bird fell to the ground instantly. No one understood how it happened. That night, Clara decided to investigate Hank's past. She combed through Vietnam War records, retired soldier documents, newspaper clippings, and censored military reports. One document caught her attention. In 1968, during an operation by the 5th Sniper Team, an enemy commander had been neutralized with a single bullet. During the operation, 10 American soldiers were rescued, and the event changed the fate of a village. The sniper's name was crossed out in black ink in all the documents, but there was a faint note in a local newspaper clipping: Sergeant Henry Larson changed the course of the war with a single shot. Clara held her breath. Uncle Hank was Corporal Henry Larson. That quiet, elderly man had once been a sniper moving through the shadows of the Vietnamese jungles, dancing with death. But now he was sitting on a bench in a park. Why? Why had he left such a great past behind and chosen silence? And why did no one know about it? As Clara's mind filled with questions, the park's ordinary silence took on a deeper meaning. Because for the man sitting on that ordinary bench, the war was not yet over. After learning about Hank's past, Clara could no longer remain silent. She told the story to the townspeople. The whispers that began soon turned into respect. People no longer saw him as just an old man, but as a hero who had saved lives in the past. One day, a small note was found attached to a bench in the park: to Sergeant Larson, thank you for your sharp eyes and quiet courage. It was a short, simple message, but Hank read it slowly, then carefully put it in his pocket. That day, there was a sparkle in his eyes that hadn't been seen in years. The story spread throughout Bozeman. An article written by Clara appeared in the local newspaper, The Man in the Park, the story of a silent marksman. After the article was published, a ceremony was held in his honor at the local VFW hall. Clara took the stage at the ceremony and spoke about Hank's life and his quiet heroism. The crowd listened intently. Then an old man stood up, a retired pilot. Leaning on his cane, he spoke in a trembling voice, I know Henry Larson. In 1968, that shot saved me. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be here. There was a long silence in the hall, then applause broke out. But Hank didn't attend the ceremony. He chose to remain silent, as always. However, the next morning, he was waiting for Clara in the park. He held his old binoculars in his hand. He turned his eyes to the sky, then smiled at Clara. Perhaps the watch continues here as well, he said. This was the first genuine smile Clara had ever seen from him. The story ended with this question. Have you ever met someone like Hank? A hero who watches silently, someone who is much more than he appears to be.